Hey, what's up, everyone?
Yo.
Yo ho ho.
Hey, hey.
We are just waiting for the speakers and setting up the live stream.
Check that link I just sent if you want to verify, but we should be good on the
Did you
live stream.
post it in workshop discussions?
No general discussion.
General discussions. That makes a lot of sense because we are in the general discussion room. Looks perfect to me. Thanks, Kerp. Now your computer can rocket ship itself into heat mode. That used to happen to me. I use Google Chrome a lot. Yeah, so why don't we take this time if anybody's got a project they're working on or feel like sharing some updates to their hackathon submission to go ahead and let this be a space for that. So I'll make it an open floor in case people want to give a quick intro of what they're working on, if they need help in the next 8 hours.
Yeah, I'll go. So we remixed the DAO canvas. It's like the business model canvas for DAOs to a generic form. So it is a couple pages of questions that can help you think through how to DAO. It's very generic at the high level design space. But yeah, it just includes common stuff you'll want to think about as you like summon a DAO. And it's in the channel for that, which is called DAO Canvas. It's in the DAO Canvas channel. There's a HackMD. You can check it out, copy it, and go through it whenever you want to launch a DAO. It works for any and all frameworks. So that's a thing now.
Nice. I think that's going to be super helpful. And that was, a pretty interesting experience that I went through with you the other day.
Yeah. Yaler test drove it. So we ran through it for Noob DAO. And
Noob DAO.
Yeah, it worked. At least the process was, fairly easy to go through, and it informed some high level questions and design decisions. And so, yeah, recommend anyone check it out. It's super easy. It takes about like 30 minutes.
And how's the progress been with tokenomics?
So it's going well. It mapped out the whole process, right? So if you want to develop a cooperative and you want that cooperative to have a blockchain entity as well as a legal entity in Wyoming, you can totally do that. We outlined what the whole process looks like. The problem is it's a bit of a pain in the ass, and it requires that you have multiple prerequisites and a couple hours of time. So the next step for us is to try to figure out how to make that easier for people. So you can just go to a website, answer a few questions, click a button, and then boom, it happens. That would be like V2. But right now, we just got everything together in one place so you can at least understand the process and go through it yourself manually if you want.
Awesome. That sounds like a super useful resource.
But I'd say we're sprinting through the day to get it as automated as possible by demo day.
And demo day is tomorrow. For those of you who have not registered, please do not forget.
We have to register? I thought you just show up.
Nope, you have to register. You just have to sign. You just have to commit a form, so I know which project it is and how the judges can evaluate it. We're making judging sheets. I'm sure there'll be projects.
I see. You put the form in. You literally went through every channel and gave everyone the form, and I just missed it. Great, thanks.
You all have the form.
Awesome.
You all have the form.
Great form, by the way. It's a very nice form. Yeah.
It's a forked form.
Yeah, good.
What about anybody else? Anyone else working on anything here they want to shill in the first 10 minutes of this call? I have a feeling Cooper's going to be a little bit tardy, so no problem. Don't be afraid. Speak up.
I want to shill, but I don't have a t-shirt, so I need to put some clothes and then I can shill.
I have to install some blinds later if anybody wants to talk about that.
Did you say some blinds?
Yeah,
To install some blinds?
On a window, yeah.
Oh, nice. It's
fascinating.
Captivating situation.
Oh, wow. The t-shirt is
Oh,
on.
I can't hear you, broski. Your microphone is turned off. Oh, I will unmute you. Oh, I have you muted.
That's just you. Yeah.
Just me.
I can hear.
I can shield the project. The energy is unbelievable. And what I've been working on the past couple of months, non-stop, full focus, is the fundraising project. And simultaneous to the island that I'm working on, there is the campus in Vermont. And these two projects are very similar because they require significant capital investment. However, the rational game theory is to just keep your own money and wait till the very last moment. So what I've wrote a simple smart contract that the sooner you commit money, the higher interest rate it provides. And in that way, it just changes the rational game theory so that if you are committed to the project, you will get more tokens if you commit early. So this is this idea in a nutshell, and I will present this project tomorrow. I will put a nice readme, nice video. And of course, I would love to create a physical establishment, whether Europe-centric or US-centric or network of our community hubs. And then we can take it to the next level by creating our own special economic zones in collaboration with the host countries. Literally today, I was chatting with guys from Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has their Cosmodrome Baikonur that they lease to Russians, and they may be able to lease some of the land on a desert to build a special economic zone next to their Cosmodrome. Just an idea.
Fascinating. It's all happening so fast. Love to see the energy and the progress of that project.
Thank you.
I like that it's composable too, so you can use it for different locations.
Thank you. This is a proof of concept. It's not ready for the mainnet. It is more of a changing the game theory. If we want to raise $2 or $3 or $5 million to buy this college in Vermont, it's not an easy task. However, by incentivizing people to commit money early, and by offering them staking incentives, and by offering variable APR, annual percentage rate, depending on how much money is committed, and by using Chainlink oracles to get accurate prices, we can literally change the incentive and make it happen. And even if not this month, not next month, sooner or later we'll reach a critical mass and make it happen.
Let me just check on our presenters and see where they are at. Yeah, just a few more minutes for the presenters. We could talk about some DAO stuff. Brada, you want to talk about DAO stuff?
Yeah. So like, I think they're going to talk about some more exotic fundraising mechanisms here, but if we want to talk about some more traditional DICO models, we can do that too. So yeah, I'll just rant on that for a few minutes while we wait for James and Cooper. So essentially, the idea is that if you have this thing called a DICO, which you guys are probably familiar with, but I'll just run through it real quick. It's a capital formation model where there's a balance of power between investors and the team raising money, right? Balances of power are generally good in that they align interests and they create checks and balances so that, one party does not take advantage of the other parties in the system. So that's great. When Vitalik wrote this post on DICOs, which is like a DAO ICO, the idea was you could have like a bonding curve. Investors buy into the curve. At whatever price they buy in, they get some tokens back. Cool. Those tokens allow them to control a tap mechanism that drains collateral from the bonding curve and gives it to the team at a set rate. So if you want to support a project or a thing, you can buy into this bonding curve and get some tokens that represent a claim on that capital. Then you can say, okay, we're going to give the money from this collateral pool that we bought into to the team at a set rate. Maybe it's weekly, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's milestone based, whatever. But the investors control that capital outflow. So that way, if the team is delivering on what they said they were going to do, they get more capital. If the investors are not happy, they can pull their capital out and leave. So it kind of creates a balance of power, which was a refreshing thought compared to the ICO world, where you would just literally say, hey, yeah, send ETH to this address, it'll be fine. And that was pretty much it. So this model is, the idea that, you could send ETH to a collateral pool and then vote on how it goes out periodically based on actual, stuff being done by the project team. And generally, the idea is that then as the project team does stuff, the tokens investors have would be worth something in that project or whatever. So that's the traditional idea. From there, we've kind of branched out. There's lots of different models being tested around capital formation, how to initially get that capital together, and then once you have it, how to distribute in a fair way that creates a balance of power between all parties involved. And yeah, that's kind of what we're going to explore here in the talk. So
do you have any examples of like people that are doing this or have done this in the DAO space currently?
Yeah, well, so examples of it are a little fewer and far between. Aragon Fundraising did build out the actual DICO model that Vitalik specified back in the day, and there's a couple projects I think of using it. Avegashi, which is the Tamagotchi that uses Aave. It's super cool. It is thinking of using it, and a couple other projects have used it, but none on the grand scale that was envisioned, back when we first started designing these things. But I think the most concrete example, if we're just thinking of the balance of power, is a good old-fashioned Moloch DAO. Because you think about it, in a Moloch DAO, you contribute capital, and then that capital is used to fund things, right? And if the investors don't like the things being funded, they can rage quit out. And any capital that hasn't been committed, they can withdraw and leave and join another DAO or whatever. So I think as far as the balance of power goes, Moloch is probably the best example of a battle-tested design that's been used in the wild, where people have coordinated capital and then they've allocated that capital to support projects and things that they want to see thrive. And it gives a balance of protection for the investors and that they can rage quit out. And also the project can request the funds and then get more funds as they deliver based on whatever investors want to do. So I would say that's probably the best and simplest model.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that's so is we've heard a lot about the DAO house raise. Is that a DICO as well?
Yeah, so the DAO house raise essentially builds on that Moloch model in that there is a specific contract called transmutation, but I think James will talk about this if he ever gets here. But The idea is that like funding proposals, instead of going through the regular Moloch funding process where it's just open-ended, you can have any amount of funds, you request a proposal, etc. It goes through a specific contract that structures proposals in a specific way, such that if you request a certain amount of funds from the DAO, then in return, the DAO gets a certain amount of tokens back. And it's a little difficult to describe without like some diagrams illustrating it. But essentially, people coordinate capital via Moloch DAO, right? And then that DAO, they have shares in that DAO for voting, and then there's capital in the DAO. Great. And then there's a project they want to support, something they think is cool, right? And so what you do is then you have this thing called a Moloch minion, which is essentially like a little sidecar for the Moloch. It's like a little bank account that's separate from the Moloch. When tokens are in the minion, they cannot be rage quit. Only tokens in the main Moloch DAO can be rage quit. So you create this little sidecar, and then you put some tokens in there that represent contributions, right? And that's all they do. They just represent contribution, just stick them in. Okay, cool. Then you create a contract that creates contracts, and that contract says, hey, when you have a funding proposal, I will create a specific request that requests tokens out of the main Moloch guild bank, and then gives them to you, and simultaneously takes some of these contribution tokens from the minion sidecar and puts them in the DAO guild bank. So it's like a swap, kind of. And the purpose of this is that then people have contributed tokens and capital to the Moloch DAO. As that capital gets drawn down via funding proposals, the contributor tokens get put into the guild bank. So then if you rage quit, you will get either your capital back or a mix of your capital and the contributor tokens. Or if all the capital is drawn down, you'll get your contributor tokens back. So then it's kind of like proof of contribution, right? So you can say, hey, I contributed to this project. Look, I have these tokens. Whenever you feel like you've gotten enough of that whole thing, rage quit out, and then you've got your contributor tokens directly proportional to the amount of capital that you contributed to the project that was drawn down via these specific proposals. So it creates a really nice balance of power in that, the teams doing stuff that are requesting capital have a very clear way to request support. And the people who want to support people building awesome stuff have a really clear way to coordinate their capital. Every step along the way, people who are supporting the project can rage quit out and exit. But also, as their capital is drawn down to support projects, they get a token that represents their proof of contribution, which is nice. And they get a nice fuzzy feeling from that token that represents the amount that they contributed to support awesome open source work. So
I wonder,
does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Does it make sense to everyone else?
I'm a
We
member.
take that as a yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I'm in.
cool. Yeah, because in that description, I assume that you understand what a Moloch DAO is. I assumed that you kind of understand how token contracts can be composed. There's a lot of assumptions baked into that, and there wasn't a diagram illustrating it. So sorry if that was unclear.
I do think most of the people in this room specifically know what a Moloch DAO and a token contract is.
Cool.
Just by looking at the usernames.
Yeah. So yeah, and the main idea, right, is like Moloch allows you to have a trustless way to coordinate capital, and then from there you want a way to send that out to a project and get some sort of proof of contribution return. And this kind of composition of a series of mechanisms, Moloch DAO, minion sidecar, proposal contract creator, allows you to do that in kind of a nice way. So.
I guess another question that's kind of interesting is like, so moving into this new stage of like DICOs, like getting funding from friends and such, is how do you align the incentives for people to put money into these projects with really, it's like there's no guarantee of return, right? And I guess that's how it is with any investment. But in this sense, it's even more obscure, right? Because you're just depositing tokens in a contract in the hopes that that contract will, shoot you out some tokens again at some point in time in the future. And hopefully those tokens may be worth more than what you paid for them.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So if you're making an investment, the process you go through with due diligence and analysis and whatnot is going to be very different than if you're just supporting a cool open source project. So Moloch DAO originally was created as a grants DAO. It's just like, hey, we want to support ETH too. Like, let's coordinate our capital and help get it done. Together, we can do more than we could individually, right? That's pretty powerful, and that's not an investment. If you are making investments, the way you do that is going to look a lot different. That's why Moloch v2 has a very different design than Moloch v1, because it was made more for investment clubs. In this case, like the mechanism I had described with kind of the DAO house thing, it's a generic mechanism. So you get a token back that's like proof of contribution. Maybe that gives you governance in the project. Maybe you just hold it like an NFT badge that says you did cool stuff. Who knows? Like that design space around what the token does is completely open-ended. This just says it's a mechanism to balance power between those with capital and those who want capital to create a fair and equal exchange where at all times all parties involved either have voice or exit. So you can either vote on stuff or exit if you disagree. So I think that's the main thing is creating that mechanism, and then how you use that mechanism is really what defines if it's an investment or a grant or whatever.
That makes sense. I wonder if we're going to encounter like a kind of a collective shift in perspective from the 2017 ICO phase of like, buy tokens and then price go up, to moving into a new phase of like, support projects you really believe in, that you really see going somewhere. So that at the end of the day, even if price doesn't go up, you're like, this is something I wanted to stand behind.
That would be nice. However, I will say that throughout history, in every single stock market or just market or exchange or anything that has ever happened ever in the history of humanity, as far as I know, number go up has never gone away as a theme. So I think like if you look at the stock market today, if you look at the crypto market today, if you look at the stock market 5 years ago, crypto market 5 years ago, tulip mania, anything from then till now, number go up is like, people like that, man. We're really into it.
It's a strong meme. Well, with that, I think we can move into the main talk because Cooper is here now in the building.
Woo!
Yo, what's up, everyone?
Welcome, Cooper.
I was doing some scaffold ETH magic with Austin Griffith, trying to figure out what's going on with some of these contracts under the hood.
Flopping and popping. Well,
yeah,
if you
baby.
If you want to share your screen, feel free, or otherwise just run into, set the stage for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess I kind of want to open it up first. What would you like to hear about? There's about 50 million different things I could talk about, but I'd rather start from a place of kind of getting some feedback from people on topics, projects, sectors they want to hear about, and I can kind of dive into things from there.
What's the new Wi-Fi?
What's the new Wi-Fi? The new fork of Wi-Fi, or what?
What's the next hot thing? I want to hear about the next hot thing, because Wi-Fi was last week. What's this week?
Man, that's a good question. Honestly, it's actually interesting because I feel like DeFi is kind of reaching this tipping point where there's like a lot of new projects coming out, but like sort of the more of them that come out, the caliber of how exciting they are like gets a little bit less exciting. So it's like there's more opportunities, and more projects popping up. But I'd actually say that a lot of them just are just shipping to like get into the DeFi hype, rather than it being like this new project that's been building for years. Having this big come to world moment. I feel like we're in this weird like transition page where, everyone's just trying to ship something in a month or two because they know they can just kind of ride this whole DeFi wave that's going on. Maybe not the answer you're looking for.
No, I'm definitely feeling those vibes. Yeah. Well, what's the project that you're the most excited about then, that you personally think is like really amazing fundamentally and as well as within the context of the time we live in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the notion of what's going on with Wired and Wi-Fi is really cool just because it's people, really contributing from a bunch of fringe angles. I thought that after this first week when the yield farming stuff stopped and people were making 1,000% APR, that the whole project was just going to die. Or not die, but like there would be significantly less interest. But I've just been surprised that conversations are going really strong. There's a lot of discussion about how we keep the project going. I see a ton of moderators stepping up and no one's getting paid to do anything. And I think the fact that people are just like stepping up to contribute value because they genuinely find something interesting is something that I haven't really seen in crypto before, because everyone else is majorly incentivized by their bags. And I guess that's still a large degree here. But it seems like the lack of, tangible paid roles is fascinating to see people just going out of their way and helping to get shit done.
Yeah, that's awesome. And does that kind of like tie into the DeFi way? See, that's on the agenda, and I'm curious what that is. Does that kind of tie into like the spirit of community collaboration and coordination of capital to do cool stuff and whatnot? Or
Yeah, I think it's getting there. I think that, when we look at things like Uniswap LPs and being able to contribute capital to balance and earn money, I think the whole tenet is that it's not supposed to be one centralized entity doing all of those things on the back end. It's, a pool of all of us sort of coming together and sharing our resources to add collective value. And the more we can sort of like align these protocols so that when you do contribute that value, your upside becomes greater as more people use it. I think that's kind of the ethos of, as Pete said, the DeFi way, I think is how he put it down in there.
cool. Yeah, and I think that kind of touches on the point of like composability in Web3 and DeFi specifically. Because I think like a lot of previous fintech companies, whatever, try to vertically integrate or do things that's much more walled garden. But like in DeFi, it seems like, and you can probably speak to this more than I can, but it seems like most protocols try to be extremely thin and simple and focus on doing one thing and one thing really well. And then that way they can be composed and connected into lots of other systems, and the more value flows through them, the more value they can capture or whatnot. So the goal is really to make a very small widget that gets used in a lot of things versus making a big thing that captures the market. Are you seeing that too, or what's your take on that?
I'm definitely optimistic on projects that are just using what already works and sort of tying things together. So I guess like Zapper is a good example of that, where they have this DeFi dashboard where you can enter into a ton of positions, but they're relatively lightweight in terms of their interactions. There's smart contracts to connect between different protocols, but there's not like a whole new protocol that's being built or anything like that. It's basically just connecting existing building blocks. And I don't know, we're going to see a lot of new DeFi protocols coming online in the next like 3 months that are just not really necessary. Like I say that kind of lightly because I do think that people are trying really hard to make them necessary, but there's just going to be a lot of people just building, this random standalone thing that maybe makes like more stable coins or allows you to do some weird synthetic type thing. And I don't know, I guess I'm really happy with the amount of protocols we have right now and sort of what can be done with those. And I'd rather see people work on building on top of those rather than sort of continue to build more horizontally out and making like a lot of weird new things. But I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. So I'm kind of just optimistic that more connectivity tools come in and things that sort of fuse good things from an existing protocol rather than just trying to build something from scratch. So I'm just kind of over, how many new things are trying to come online to do the same thing in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, one of the kind of the power of composability, right, is you can compose these things and create new things, and the amount of things that can be combined grows exponentially every time you add a new thing. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy to see the space explode.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear people that are in the channel right now. What have you been using in DeFi recently, and sort of what are the ceilings you're reaching, I guess, right? So like when you're using these DeFi protocols, what are things that are just like kind of piss you off, outside of gas prices, and where are some of like the problems that we're trying to solve with things like this hackathon? Nothing.
Well, I will
Everyone
say
loves DeFi.
one thing that I find I guess a little amusing, or I don't know if it's amusing, but a lot of times people will quote like the annual rates that they'll get on things, but that rate will usually only be there for a couple days or a couple weeks or something because it all changes and fluctuates so much. So I think there's like this kind of perception by a lot of people new to the space, like, oh, cool, like you get these massively better rates, but it's like, yeah, but in order to stay on top of those, it's kind of a part-time job to switch to knowing what's hot and what's working, or those rates are variable and fluctuate. They're not just
right.
Stable.
I recently did a rhetorical hypothetical question: what is the cost of my attention? What is the cost of my gas fees? What is the risk of smart contract getting an exploit? And I'm realizing that the average percentage rate is about 5 to 6%. Maybe if it is 10, then the markets are efficient. And I made a decision that the cost of my time, cost of my attention is not worth chasing 5% gains. I feel much more secure just without chasing these small gains. And I think that this is these products do not generate that much value. I much more rather see Ethereum being adopted on the government and United Nations level.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. The reason why people like DeFi so much is just a good way to print money. And I think that, if people are figuring out how to use these protocols, they can get their worth up. And to a lot of people, that's sufficient right now to show that Ethereum is working as a protocol. I definitely don't think that that's the end all be all by any means, but I'm happy that we found something that at least is using Ethereum tooling in a way that's beyond, buy a token and you make more money because the token goes up in value. At least DeFi is trying to push the needle in the direction of you actually have to put your capital to work to earn something back from that. So I agree right now, everything in DeFi is very capital oriented. You put in $1,000 and because you do that, you're able to get 5% back on that. But really where I'm looking for this to be headed is not only putting your capital into something, it's, hey, if I invest my time into a governance forum, or if I invest my time into staking on a Nexus Mutual contract because I think it's secure, being able to sort of curate your knowledge and earn more rewards for your expertise of a topic more so than your capital contributions to them. I think that premise is really awesome and something that a lot more projects are hopefully going to be taking note of in the coming months here.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think it kind of touches on the point of protocols that are already live and doing stuff versus all the new ones that are popping up. And it seems like, if there's only so much attention, right? So if people actually care about a protocol, they actually engage in the governance and making it better and etc. Over time, those protocols are probably going to outcompete the others that are just kind of pop up and then die off, right?
Totally. Yeah, and I think again, just goes back to this question of why do people actually care about things? I'm not going to be blind and say that people care about Wi-Fi solely because of how it launched. I think that a lot of people made a lot of money off of it, and they want to see that keeps moving forward in that direction. But I'm optimistic that as we step away from completely crypto primitives, so for an example, Audius is a music streaming platform. It's built on top of Ethereum, and a lot of what they're working on is how playlisters and artists can get paid more for their music. I'm basically just trying to introduce this premise that if you curate good music, there'll be a financial incentive to do so. So sort of the more that we can move away from all the discussions are about money all the time, and all we're governing is how money is spent in different protocols. It's more of like, hey, this product or service has a very specific purpose, and my ability to do that service or purpose well earns me more money. I think that's really attractive and something that I really think that could take just Ethereum-based products to the next level or set them apart from what we see today.
Yeah, totally. And that kind of reminds me of the early days, right? When Ethereum was first getting started, there were all these talks about the internet of value, right? And it was all like, we're going to unlock all this value. And then, some years went by. But now we're starting to see that kind of come full circle where it's like by creating value and actually engaging and doing a thing that provides, a valuable service or something for people, that then capital can follow that and the two can be aligned, which would be really cool.
Definitely. Yeah, I guess I'm curious to hear, Rado, like what's been interesting to you in the DeFi sphere coming from more of like a governance DAO specific mindset? I know that a lot of teams are looking to Aragon to build, these governance solutions, but I think that it's a really new thing, right? Like it's only in the past month or two that everyone is really caring about that. And I'm kind of, I don't know if concerned's the right word, but I'm just worried that a lot of the reason people are doing that is because they see it as the right thing to do optically, more so than it actually being a decision that they genuinely care about when they're designing and building these protocols.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing a lot of protocols start to explore DAOs and governance. And yeah, I mean, if you can launch a governance token and have it pop, that's a huge incentive. And, if you know that just by saying you have a governance token, it's going to pop, it disincentivizes putting a lot of effort into the design space. But as you said, like over time, the protocols that people actually want to engage with, where value is actually aligned, are the ones people are going to contribute to, and those are going to outcompete the ones that don't. So I mean, right now it's a
Agreed.
very frothy market. We're going to see a lot of things getting launched. The ones that don't really put a lot into the design or incentive alignment are going to kind of pop and then drop. But the ones that actually have built a community and have actually aligned interests and people actually want to contribute to, I think those ones are really going to succeed. And that's hard, but yeah.
It's interesting because not every protocol or product needs to have this really extensive, protocol governance happening. I feel like there's definitely situations where products or application can be really basic. Maybe the only things being governed are like one or two key switches. And in that scenario, you don't need this whole giant DAO structure with multi-level voting stuff with, vesting period on the token, staking, all this stuff. And I just feel like we might be entering into a territory where projects are going to get shaded if they don't have a DAO or if they don't have a significant governance component. I'm not sure that that's like scalable for every new party who comes in. It seems like a weird thing to try and bucket them into.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the simpler the better, right? When you're dealing with complex, nonlinear mechanisms that compose in unintuitive ways, the simpler they can be, the better. Some protocols don't need governance, like you can just like set it and forget it. Some, most actually might need to adjust a few parameters or something. And a few are going to need a more complex mechanism because it's a very specific thing they're trying to achieve. And they need a mechanism that aligns people to do that thing. But like, yeah, for the most part, if they need governance, it's going to be around like managing a few protocol parameters so that the community has, some say in that. And also with that governance, ensuring that the people who make decisions on that have skin in the game. So you can't just buy a bunch of tokens, vote, and then, sell them all, right? You want to have some sort of like skin in the game thing. But yeah, for most cases, it's very context specific, and you got to be first really clear about the goal you're trying to achieve, and then figure out what you need to do for that. And oftentimes, the simpler the better, and you can really get like 80, 90, or 100% of the way there with a very simple mechanism.
Yeah, and I think to your point there, I think that protocol parameters are the ones where we've seen a lot of attention. So for example, with Balancer, how they're doing their liquidity mining, for Compound, how they were distributing comp tokens, even Wi-Fi with their inflation now. Those are obviously good starting points because people have a financial incentive to actually give time and attention to that. But I'm definitely always looking like one step further in terms of how does an average user of a protocol participate in governance when they're not, super deep down the technical rabbit hole. They don't care about tweaking something on the protocol level. They just want to contribute to product experience and sort of like what they're interacting with on a daily basis, and trying to make those type of governance discussions a little bit more palatable so that more people can get involved without having a significant degree of understanding of what's going on a deep end with the protocol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's super essential because DAOs are really all about people, right? A DAO is only as good as the people who are part of it. And so if the mechanism's too complex, not a lot of people are going to understand it, and they're not going to be able to vote. They're going to vote on things and not know really what that means. But
that's
also
what we're seeing
too,
today, right? Is people just voting yes because they want to get a reward rather than actually like caring about what the vote actually is or understanding what they're even voting on.
Right. So like if you're launching a DAO, not only do you have to think about the actual design of the DAO, but how to engage your community. Because the community aspect is half of it, if not more, right? I would say it's much more, like 80% of it. It's like getting people to actually engage with your protocol and building that community, talking to people, making sure they know what's up, they have a way to engage, all of that. It's the most important part. And I think in a very engineering focused industry, especially in a frothy market, a lot of focus is just on like building the mechanism and launching the token, but not enough thought is going into actual community development, community engagement, and building that ecosystem that can help your project succeed long term.
Definitely. And it is weird because we don't really know what the right answer is. And I think that what I was saying before is teams are kind of stretching to figure out what that is. And like until there's like really clear uses of that. So for example, I think one good sector for this is gaming. So like a game like Axie Infinity or something, there's all this discussion from the community about certain cards being too strong or not being strong enough. Those type of decisions, turning that to governance, I think becomes a lot more interesting because again, it's on sort of like what you're doing on a day-to-day basis using a product or service and being able to contribute to those discussions, at least to me, is a little bit more interesting than sort of tweaking an interest rate parameter on, say, the DAI contract on Compound, which is incredibly important, but just as sort of like an average user, not something that I care tremendously about. And I don't think that I really ever will, even if there was an incentive to care about it more.
Yeah, and I think that's it kind of like ties back into the core meme of all of this, like, you know, Ethereum Internet of Value stuff, is that you can have systems or apps or platforms that are by and for the users, where the users actually can control the decisions of how the thing they use every day works, which I think makes a ton of sense, because the people closest to the problems, who actually have skin in the game to, you know, experience the consequences of their decisions around those problems, are the most incentivized to make the right decisions to solve the problem. And if you have a platform that does that, it's going to solve its own problems. It's going to become a better platform. That's going to be great. More people are going to want to join it. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely a balancing act. I think we're getting there for sure, but I'm definitely still searching for, like I said before, and I'll keep coming back to it, you know, just something that someone who has $10 worth of a token just happens to use a product because they like it, they can actually contribute to that discussion and get rewarded for doing so. You know, I think that there's all these checks and balances in place to make sure that proposals can only be submitted by people with a ton of money and that have a ton of know-how. And that makes sense, but I think that that does alienate, you know, when those conversations are only being proposed by people with deep technical knowledge. You know, the people who actually want to provide feedback to them are often boxed out because it is just such a complicated topic in the first place.
I think on
Yeah.
that as well, just to jump in as well, if I assume I'm allowed, but like I think it is really interesting as well, like with these, you know, the smaller player in that situation, the guy that has $10 of a token, is I think, you know, incentivizing that person and seeing that person get involved, I think is actually going to happen more and more over time. You know, it's like we've only just sort of started this governance, you know, framework across DeFi and across, you know, crypto. Maybe DAOs have been revitalized for a year or two, you know, and then sort of DeFi's picked up over the past 6 months, you know, maybe 12. And I think, you know, over the next whatever foreseeable future, it's sort of like the barrier to entry and like the barrier to participation and like the incentive, I don't know, walls of incentives, I think are going to go up and up and up. And like that person who has $10 of a token, you know, I think within like the foreseeable future, there's a way where they get rewarded and they get incentivized to participate.
Yeah, I definitely think that best practices are going to need to emerge, and we're just going to have to like try a bunch of stuff out, because there's a lot of things we can draw from, but we've never really quite had this opportunity in this way. So we have to try a bunch of stuff out, see what works, do more of what works, less of what doesn't, and over time kind of build these you know, sustainable community-driven economies.
Yeah, I really like this idea of trying to better identify standards, because I think that we're seeing that a lot with liquidity mining and yield farming right now, is any project can take that concept and apply it to their ecosystem in a pretty clear way. You know, maybe as we saw in 2017, everyone using ERC20 token standards or sort of doing token distributions in one way. You know, the more that we can identify those really basic things that any project can take and just sort of mold to their liking, I think that the further we'll get with how far they can reach.
This is why I'm so excited about ceramic and like the, you know, bringing down the abstraction layer on like the terms and types and classes, just getting it into as low a level of English as possible. Because as one of you mentioned, the DAOs being about people, we can get non-technical people involved in governance decisions if we just abstract away the entire technical thing. Because what we're really talking about is like decisions that a group is making that have, you know, that can be explained much more plainly if you have like a middleware, like a ceramic document type that can translate like the natural language of just a conversation into the mechanisms for the actual smart contract.
You want to talk a little bit more about what ceramic is and sort of how it's helping with that?
I am not an expert to do it. I can give my understanding. It's like so sort of the update to the linked data, and with IPFS and IPLD, creating a document type that is that people can agree upon. So it's an ontology for a concept, so that everybody agrees that this is how we are going to talk about, say, voting, like the names and types for voting look like this, and then they translate into smart contract terminology that looks like this. It's like a standards for language types, and it's decentralized. So just like with schema.org, you have this universal document graph where it's not canonical. So like, it's not like this is how we talk about medicine. whoever's having the conversation can all agree we're going to use this ceramic document that contains the rules of our language space. And because we've all agreed to those rules, we can look up on IPFS, here's, you know, what the classes and types are, here's what here, and so that allows us to do things like identity. You know, it's no surprise that this is a 3-box project. Like this makes it so that you can have one identity model across a bunch of things, but it takes it much deeper to get us into like, okay, now we can share the same documents like on environmental management. Like we can say that this is a list of terms. You can have like they have this thing called tiles, which are like, they define the schemas and the metadata and service policies and agreements. So you have like, it works well, I imagine, with Ocean Protocol and things like that, where you can just sum up the rules. This is what our DAO is about. Here's all the documents, and it's like a machine code for the sort of social aspects of communication.
Totally. Yeah, and it is fascinating to think about like making a standard that actually works and is adopted by multiple people and multiple projects is probably like the most difficult thing to do. You know, we definitely see parallels where concepts can be translated to different projects, but like taking that a step further and actually getting that to either a contract or a token standard or something like that, and making that palatable and sort of composable is probably exponentially harder than just like an idea like yield farming that sort of spreads and means a million different things.
And it makes like the cumulative nature of reputation and of like shared knowledge, it makes it something that we can touch in the Ethereum space, like using an Oracle, for example. You can have a whole ceramic document package that includes all the policies and agreements of like an entire like industry, and we can all look those up together so that we don't have to worry. Like we've already agreed that, you know, this identity class looks like this, so we don't have to agree on it every time we communicate. So a bunch of different organizations it's like really can be kind of just looked at in more business logic terms, which is what I think is most exciting to get us to a point where we can do like DAO governance, because then we can just talk about it like we're talking about a city council meeting. But every one of those terms, every rule in the council has been translated into the hard stuff, like the IPFS. Is storing like this is how the machine code for this smart contract delivers what we all are just talking about as natural, like civic language. Does that make sense?
Definitely. Yeah, it does. And I think that you made a good point there. And something I'm sort of conscious of is there's a very special type of person who wants to go and participate in sort of their local community discussions about like really just governance, right? Like there's a very special type of person who wants to go out of their way to sort of contribute to group conversations about improving whatever it is they care about. And I think that with DeFi and stuff like that, it's become easier because we get paid to do that financially, or we have incentives to do that. But we are going to reach this sort of tipping point where, you know, how do we make governance cool, I guess is the way that I think about it. And how do we make these things presentable and palatable so that people genuinely care? And it's not just sort of like the really fringe people that want to participate.
And it's an equalizing fact. Like if you're working 2 jobs and then have to take care of your kids, you don't have time to go to a community, like a civic meeting often. So it's often people who have a bit more stability in their lives that get to have the loudest voice. And this equalizes like the stakeholder thing. It's like you don't need to go to the board meeting of the group that you're participating in can use a DeFi instrument basically to fund the time and the attention like of the people to actually take 20 minutes or an hour or whatever a week to consider things so that they don't lose their place in the conversation. And that's where I think we could, demonstrate that a bit more at a really hyper local level. It wouldn't be that complicated to start modeling some of that. I'd be up for trying that out with anyone who finds that interesting.
Definitely.
Piggybacking off that idea, I can't hear who's speaking right now. Maybe you can move closer to the mic. Oh, no, I might be on the wrong mic.
Change of mics. Technical difficulties. I like this Discord setting. I'll be honest, I never really have used a sort of like group call type thing. It's pretty chill.
Yeah.
That's the one.
There you
Better?
go.
There we
Yeah.
go.
Yeah, my headset's across the room, so that wouldn't be the one I want. But piggybacking off of this kind of common man kind of voting in a DAO thing, I think the question for like if an app needs governance comes down to like asking like does the community know why or does the community know why we need to be decentralized, and do they even know what decentralization is in regards to this specific community? I think like kind of having governance gives this decentralized like a source of or a centralized, not centralized, but a source of like structure around the decentralization, right? But if nobody in the community knows why they're decentralized, no one cares about the votes, they don't know which way it's going. It's kind of just like, oh, it's decentralized for fun, right? And I think that question answering that question gives people, for example, if you're doing a prediction market where you have to make decisions on something that might not be, 1 or a 0, right, true or false, and you need people to vote on, okay, this is what happened, right? That makes sense to people that like, oh, I need to make a decision to, that makes sense to me. This is why it's decentralized. But if you're kind of coming in, to like, let's say a comp meeting or a DAI meeting or a maker meeting, and you're like, I might not understand fully why this thing is decentralized at first, right? So I need to do research, I need to do all this stuff, and it's like gets overwhelming, right? So relaying that like reasoning of decentralization at the highest level and like sheds light on the DAO.
Definitely, man. Yeah, and I think that your point about decentralization needing to just people need to understand why that's even a thing in the first place. I think that a lot of teams are just saying, oh, we have a DAO now, so we're handing it off to the community, and now it's decentralized. It's obviously not as easy of a process there. And again, I think that the way that so far we've seen people care about governance is solely because of financial incentives. I don't think that is as much about, hey, the compound team still has the ability to stop withdrawals. I think it's more about, hey, we want to be able to make more money ourselves by being able to sort of give compound these certain rights, like for a fee over claims or something like that. So it seems logical that we incentivize governance with monetary and financial incentives to start. But I think that latter problem, how you do that without those, is something that we've never really been able to solve, like for as long as I can think of.
Can I just ask a basic question that I know everyone here has an answer to, but I'm curious to learn from all of your perspectives. What is the purpose of DeFi?
I mean, the obvious answer, I think, for me would just be to try and make more money without anyone being able to take it from you. I know it's a kind of like really down to a really weird way of framing it, but just the fact that I can sort of do financial interactions and know that it's completely on my own and there's not someone like watching over my shoulder everything I do and being like, hey, give me a cut of that when you do it. Just sort of that like financial freedom to be able to give these principles to anyone and say like, hey, if you know what you're doing and you can figure out how to use these things, there's a lot of value to be captured there. And sort of, it's not this gate-kept thing where only select people can do it. It really just is a matter of you have to go out of your way to learn how to do it. And if you do so, there'll be rewards for doing that.
And I mean, for up until DeFi emerged, it was only really wealthy people that could afford to have a hedge fund manager handle like the complex derivatives markets and options markets. And I mean, now you can trade options on traditional stocks, but it's not the same. Like having complex derivatives that are stacking and adjusting interest rates. These are complicated things. and suddenly it's democratized and everybody has access to them, and you can build them, because also pairing them with Ethereum and ERC20 tokens, you can create value aligned tokens, and then you can create combinations of derivatives between them. So those two things together are like insanely powerful, and we're just beginning to see that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I agree with the previous 2 points too. I think like the point of DeFi from my perspective is like, so the accreditation laws where basically, you can't invest in things, or, you can't get a fund manager unless you have X amount of money. I think it's basically just like the opposite of the accreditation laws, sort of opening that up. So if you have 50 cents, I mean, maybe not with Ethereum fees at the moment, right? But hopefully in a future, if you've got 50 cents, you can sort of like start participating in the financial system. As opposed to like you literally need 100 grand, otherwise you cannot do anything cool. Fuck you, which is basically how this.
Yeah.
I like what the Bankless team has been doing too with all this. I think DeFi gives you like where this traditional stock market is kind of a treasure hunt. DeFi gives you like a roadmap kind of, or at least some kind of treasure map kind of deal where you can like maybe you'll go the wrong way for a bit, but you can also kind of like recheck your line. You can recheck where you are and pivot if you need to.
Do you think that's partly due to like the different dashboards and sort of the maintenance part of it, that makes it like more an active thing?
Yeah. There's this like different medium of expression, right? With like kind of phones and computers and this, clicking buttons. And in terms of the traditional stock market, where it's just kind of big lists and like big graphs, and you can kind of, I think DeFi cares more about the future, or trying to market to like the common, future at least. It's kind of,
yeah.
That's what
I'm going to piggyback on what you just said. DeFi aims to market at the future, and say my opinion of what DeFi is for is saving the world, but people just don't know it yet.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think it's a necessary step on the road to the singularity.
Totally.
I thought the singularity already happened.
I don't know. We wouldn't know, is the theory. It could have. We're already not steering the ship. I don't know. Elon Musk might agree with that. You're gonna talk about Instagram.
Probably
DeFi,
opt into Neuralink.
DeFi X Brainlink or Neuralink.
I'd be an early adopter of Neuralink if I had to guess. Not the first person, so I don't just get completely screwed for life, but early adopter for sure. But, dude, imagine how good you'd be at yield farming if it just triggered stuff into your brain in real time. Just ping you to move your ether somewhere. After you even click any buttons, you just think about it and just
I'm still
money.
afraid of LASIK.
Opt in, bro. It's all good. Dylan's got our back. He cares about the best, right?
I just want to say, we're coming up on the hour, and I really appreciate you guys coming through and everyone kind of throwing in talks and a little bit of opinion and discussion. Should we do some like closing thoughts? And
yeah, I mean, on my side, just popping in here, it's kind of a testament to the grassroots effort of this hackathon. I think that there's a lot of hackathons in Ethereum space, but this one in particular is people really going out of their way to collaboratively contribute, which is what hackathons are about. So I'm super excited to see what submissions are submitted tomorrow, and then also some of the winning ones, and would definitely love to keep in touch with anyone that's here if you want to continue the conversation, or if you have any projects you'd like to share with me to take a look at.
Thanks for hosting this, guys.
Yeah, thanks to you guys for coming through, and for all of you that are coming to demo day tomorrow, 9 a.m. PST, we'll be here in this same channel, going through the DAO Hack Month submissions. So thanks for coming through and making this thing possible.
Thanks for having us.
All right, thanks James, thanks Cooper. Talk to you guys later.